This video is sponsored by Aura. Hello, my vegan chocolate chip cookies. Welcome back to my channel. Thank you for joining me for this one. Darlings, even the most rebellious, intuitive, and brilliant of witches can harbour toxic mindsets in their practice. And we get these mindsets from our traumas, our previous experiences. We get them from capitalism. We get them from religious trauma. We get them from spiritual elitism. We get them from all over the place, okay? They're in the water, they're airborne, and we pick them up from all over the place. And we have to go through certain phases of deconditioning in our path to rid ourselves of these toxic mindsets, to rid ourselves of attitudes that are not helpful for us as witches and move forward in a healthier way. And I want to talk about that today by listing 12 of the toxic mindsets, the shadow attitudes, if you will, that can come up for witches. Now, none of this stuff is universal. You might not necessarily agree with all of them. You might not even think some of them are shadowy attitudes to have. I think witches very often, although we get along in the main, we can't agree on lunch, okay? So trying to get witches to agree on all 12 of these toxic mindsets would be like trying to herd kittens into an orderly queue. It's not going to happen, and I wouldn't try. But I would be interested in knowing which ones of these toxic attitudes have you seen come up in your own path? Are you dealing with any of them now? Have you managed to get to the other side of some of them? And if you disagree with me and you think some of these are actually not toxic mindsets, Kellyanne, I really don't see what's wrong with this, hit me up down in the comments. Let's have a discussion. However, if there are any in this list that you feel do reflect some of the dodgy stuff going on inside of you, then hopefully this will be an opportunity to name it, to dismantle it, and to put something better in its place. So here we go. Here are the 12 toxic mindsets I think witches could do with rethinking. Number 1, the most powerful witchcraft is serious and solemn. In other words, it is not playful, it's not silly, there's no comedy in it, there's no belly laughs in it. It is the stuff where you are feeling very serious, you are taking it all in a very stony-faced way, and it is basically, you know, very solemn, very sensible. And this can sometimes be a little bit of a ceremonial magic kind of attitude. And if there are any ceremonial magicians watching and you're thinking, I'm fun, Kellyanne. I'm not serious all the time. That's fine, but you've got to admit that a lot of the resources and the materials and the general attitude, even the general aesthetic around things like ceremonial witchcraft and actually also traditional witchcraft, you know, it has a solemn vibe to it. It is very serious, and there's nothing wrong with that. But this attitude can come from those kinds of resources or those kinds of discourses. It can also, of course, come from religious trauma. It can come from being raised in religious environments where you felt like it wasn't okay to be playful, and God was not about the fun. God was about the rules, and God was about making sure that you toe the line and you take your life seriously, your relationship with God seriously, the church seriously, the Bible seriously. It's all very serious, darling. So with this kind of attitude, there's not much room for play, there's not room for silliness, there's not much room for the inner child, and there's not much room to be lighthearted about things and just to have a rip-roaring, good little disco of a time in your witchcraft.
What the hell are you wearing?
This is the mirror ball suit.
The way that this can show up in your path is when you feel like things like laughing and glitter and play and even mistakes and some of the folly of those mistakes and the silliness of those mistakes is not really allowed. You feel like informal language and kind of winging it and being spontaneous and seeing what happens invalidates your magic or makes it less significant. So it can definitely show up in that way. Maybe you do a bit of self-surveillancing whenever you're being playful or irreverent. Whenever you're having a good time, you kind of clock yourself and you're like, oh, I'm supposed to be doing magic, you know. Why am I being so cavalier and so silly and having such a lovely moment here when I should be really serious, I should be focused, I should be in the zone. Magic does not have to be grim-faced and tight-lipped all of the time. The universe responds to your playfulness and your joy, your creativity, your sense of artistry, your sense of whimsy, okay? Frolicking can be very magical.
One of my favourite spiritual practices. When things get a little bit too serious, I need to just anchor in a little bit of sacred silliness. Grab yourself a flute, skedaddle off into the whimsical area of the forest, and just...
Very whimsy, my friend.
Just winging it and being playful and seeing what happens can be very magical. So this might be an area where things maybe need to alchemize a little bit. Number 2, I am not powerful enough to do the spell that I want to do. I'm not powerful enough to create the change that I want to create using witchcraft. This one usually has its roots in low self-esteem. It can have its roots in being underestimated by others, bullied by others. It can be to do with your role within the family that you were raised in sometimes. Sadly, it can also come from comparison if you're comparing yourself to other practitioners. And sometimes it can come from just the resources that you've been exploring, being very fastidious and very hardline about what is and is not a powerful witch and what you need in order to be a powerful witch. I've spoken before on the channel about ableism in a lot of the book resources that I read growing up, and how I feel like a lot of the witchy books that were popular when I was growing up were not very facilitating towards neurodivergent people, for example. So I read quite a few books where it said that before you even attempt a spell, you need to be able to gaze into a candle flame for an hour. You need to be able to do unbroken meditation for goddess knows how long. You need to be able to envision this or envision that, which is no good for people with aphantasia. So all of these things, all of these different like barriers to entry for what it means to be a powerful witch were things that I witnessed in the resources I was reading growing up. There was also a lot about physical movement in there and how that helps you raise energy, and it's the most potent way to raise energy. This is not great for people that have physical limitations in any way, right? That can't actually use movement as the primary form of energy raising. So there's a lot of different ways that this attitude can come in of like, I'm not powerful enough, either because I don't have what it takes according to this resource, because I have low self-esteem from my past, because I'm comparing myself to other witches who seem more capable and more potent. The way that this might show up is by avoiding any bigger workings that you have planned. Your heart might really be set on doing something big and fizzy and juicy and fireworky, but you just won't. You'll leave it aside because you convince yourself that it's going to fall flat. You're not the person to try and attempt that kind of thing. And it may also show up through you downplaying any of your previous wins, writing them off as coincidences, not really taking the credit for what it is that you have managed to achieve, and witnessing your witchcraft growing and your strength growing, because you're just not taking credit for that. You're not allowing yourself to celebrate what you have managed to achieve. Your power is not something external that you need to claim, and it's not something behind a, frosted glass partition that you can't get to. It is something that you discover within yourself and you reclaim it and you bring it to the surface. You bring it to your consciousness. All witches are powerful. They just need to maybe figure out their skill set and where they are really cooking on gas with their witchcraft, but your power is there. It's only for you to find it and claim it. It's not for you to feel that it exists outside of yourself in a location where you can't get to it. In other words, you don't need anybody else's permission to be potent, my darling. You just go right ahead and do it. Okay, you just do it. Fuck these bitches, you just do it. Darlings, this video is sponsored by Aura, the incredible wellness app with over 8 million users worldwide. If you want to get out of your toxic mindsets and get into something more spiritually elevating, maybe you need this app as much as I realized I did when I first started using it. It has an incredible range of different stuff. It's got CBT, breathwork, sleep stories, podcasts, meditations, live coaching, ASMR, and so much more. So it's very impressive how much they've packed into this app, I have to say. And one thing I love about Aura is that they allow you to make playlists. You can check out my shadow work playlist. It's a 30-day playlist that you can use to do a 30-day meditation challenge like I did, and go ahead and make your own playlist as well. You can go ahead and get started for free with Aura today by clicking the link in the description of this video, and that also entitles you to 25% off membership if you do want to go ahead and become a member. I think the benefits are obvious, and it really helps my channel out when you use my link to sign up. So go ahead and do that. Thank you so much, Aura, for sponsoring. Let's get back to the video. Number 3, deities are like bosses that I desperately need to impress. Deities are these beings for whom I always need to stand on ceremony, show up looking incredible, get my words out properly, like I'm acing some kind of cosmic interview. This can be a really toxic mindset that holds us back from having intimate relationships, really powerful relationships with our beings and getting closer. And a lot of this, of course, can come from from religious programming, which frames disembodied intelligences as hierarchical and punitive. The relationship that we have with them is based on hierarchy. It's often punitive, and it's often about making sure that you are good enough and you are clean enough and you are pure enough and all of that kind of thing. So it often can be a leftover from that kind of upbringing. It can also be from low self-esteem, of course, and it can be tied into this feeling that we want to be chosen. We want to feel that we're good enough. We want to feel that we have that ultimate sign from the deities that we're working with that we are actually approved of, and we want that validation. So there can be a lot of things in there to do with attachment wounds, like I said, low self-esteem stuff inside of our ego that we need to decondition, shadow work that needs to get done, essentially, so we can start to frame our deity relationships differently. The way that this toxic mindset often shows up for witches is in things like obsessing over offerings, the wording of addresses and devotions, whether or not we've done the right thing, how often our deity is contacting us or giving us signs, and what that means about us as human beings, whether or not we failed, whether or not we are satisfying to that deity or not. You might try too hard to be the perfect devotee. You might be obsessively researching online and in books. You might be balls deep in Reddit threads, reading from other devotees about what to do and how to do it. And all the time you're kind of missing the opportunity to set up something genuine with that deity. You might also really fear spiritual punishment, right? And again, that might come from any previous religious programming, or just in general from the fact that we have been set up in our brains in a lot of parts of the world to believe that that is how religion happens. It's about punishment, and it's about being good enough. It's about making the grade. And so the way to alchemize this toxic mindset is to remember that your relationship with any being is collaborative, it's co-creative, it's really between you and them. It's got fuck all to do with anybody else, okay? Take everybody else out of the equation and really speak candidly, communicate honestly with that being about your fears and about what is going on for you, and let them reassure you, let them help you carve a different road so you can set up the relationship with the deity as you both would like it set up. It's not to do with anyone else, and it's not to do with any other religion. It's to do with you and that being. Absolutely nobody else is invited to the party.
Keep your hair in check, carpet man. I got plenty of other parties to go to. Note to self, I got no other parties to go to.
You are not a cosmic employee, okay? And you are not going for a promotion. You are in a beautiful, divine relationship of mystery and magic, and it really is something that is set up in a way that is supposed to teach you, heal you, help you and the being to have something together that is undeniable and undeniably yours. Number 4, being spiritual means that I should be rising above anger and stress and jealousy and any negative emotion, basically. And tied in with this is the idea that we should not do spellcraft if we are in a state of anger, if we are in a state of stress. We should always come to our witchcraft feeling very kind of like clean of negative emotion. One of the places that this comes from, I think, is a lot of new age distortions of things like the law of attraction. There's also a lot of spiritual bypassing crap in there, of just like, oh, spirituality is this room we go into where everything's perfect and I'm the best version of myself. So there can be a lot of that kind of hangover that's not great. For some of you, it's going to be to do with religious trauma or religious training as well. Sometimes it can come from a root of just suppressing your emotions in general. If you're someone that feels like your emotions are not allowed for whatever reason, and you tend to stuff them down, you kind of try and swallow them, you might find that that also materializes in your spiritual life too. The way that this toxic attitude tends to show up is that you will avoid going towards your witchcraft when you are overwhelmed, when you are stressed out, actually a lot of the times when you are genuinely most in need of witchcraft, which is really sad, and it's something that is like so unfortunate. And I do think that this is a toxic attitude in witchcraft that can be particularly harmful, because I genuinely believe that witchcraft should be seen as a haven for when we are at our worst and our lowest points. It can be something for our surviving, not only for our thriving, right? We're not only trying to strengthen and improve, we're also trying to get comfort. We're also trying to get kind of like the spiritual weighted blanket and cup of hot chocolate. And I think that if the witchcraft is not running the spectrum between those two things, if we're only allowed to turn up when we are like spiritual valedictorian, and we're not allowed to show up when we're on the floor and covered in mess and freaking out, then it's not really a hearty, wholesome, genuinely nutritional practice. Another way that this shows up might be in kind of like trying to numb your negative emotions, trying to ignore them, trying to pretend they're not there so that you can engage in your spirituality. And of course, this has got a lot to do with minimizing your own pain. So if you're carrying this toxic attitude, it's going to be linked very much to pretending that you are okay, or downplaying the ways in which you might really need help and you might really need witchcraft. And there is nothing wrong with that. I have spoken many times on my channel about the way that witchcraft has been a life-saving device for me, but it was only that way because I didn't feel like I had to fucking pretend to be anything else or to be feeling any other kind of way. I came to the altar as I was. I went to the astral in the state that I was in, and I did not feel like I had to, scrub out the negative emotions. Raw emotions are very potent ingredients in magic, and you do not have to pretend that you're not feeling raw and bruised and confused in order to be able to witch efficiently and meaningfully. Your fury is sacred, your sadness is sacred, your heartbreak is sacred, and I think spiritual maturity often comes from telling ourselves that we are allowed to include these things and that they are enhancing and honest. They're not something that we need to just get rid of. And if this is resonating with you at all, please watch the video that I recently uploaded about doing spells while you're angry, because that might be something that really interests you. Number 5, divination should always give me a clear, singular answer. It should tell me what I'm supposed to do. By the end of a reading, by the end of consulting my runes, my cards, my crystal ball, my tea leaves, I should know what to do. The path should be clear in front of me. This can very often come from rationalism, from binary kinds of thinking, from wanting to set up a spiritual scientific hypotheses and then prove beyond a reasonable doubt whether it is the case or isn't the case. It can also come from things like frustratingly wanting the answer, right? So you're devaluing the mystery and the deep contemplation and the nuance, the all-important nuance that comes when we are doing divination. We do not want to sit with it. We want to know so we can get the fuck on with what we're supposed to do. So we become very frustrated when divination actually sometimes isn't like that at all, and it asks more from us than we feel that it may have initially given to us. The way that this can show up is through expecting methods of divination to give you the right answer, like a calculator, and being very frustrated when that doesn't happen. It can definitely show up through reshuffling various times and asking the same question, darlings. If anybody's done that, don't worry, I'm sure you're in very, very good company. Just really ignoring the initial messages that come through because they are not as clear cut and they're not as definitive as we want them to be. So we try again, and then we get ourselves all in a muddle. We just get into a muddle, my darlings, because we are not sitting with the mystery. We are not respecting the opportunity to contemplate. We are not allowing nuance into the room. It can definitely turn up in feeling massively disappointed, losing faith in divination systems, and not coming to our divination when really it is our deep intuition to do so. But we're just afraid because we sometimes just don't get that bang on answer that we really wanted. I'm a witchcraft mentor and I speak to many, many witches about all kinds of different things. And one thing that I always try to posit to witches that are struggling with this is that divination is a dialogue. And when we approach it that way, and when we know that we can speak back and forth with the messages that have come through, we can ask for clarification, but we also need to accept the limitations of any one individual dialogue and let it marinate. Let things come in over time, over the hours following the reading, that will really allow us to put pieces together. When you have a dialogue with a human being, it's very rare when you have a deep dialogue with somebody that you go away and you never think about it again, right? You start to put more pieces together. You think of different things that you could have said. You think of inferences that you didn't understand from the other person that you now do, now that you've had a sleep or you've thought about things in a different way. Divination is no different. It's exactly that kind of meaty dialogue that we need to approach in that kind of manner. Lean into the nuance, lean into the ambiguity, respect and adore the mystery, and know that your intuition and the divination tool are co-creating. Number 6, I need to constantly be doing shadow work or I'm not evolving. AKA, I need to constantly be doing the deep work of healing and deconditioning and realization. I need to be going into those dark rooms inside my psyche. Otherwise, I'm not for real. I'm not serious and things are not getting done. I know that many of my viewers that watch my channel are cycle breakers. You have had to break at least one cycle to get to the point where you are even interested in watching content like mine. And so a lot of the time, this can be an overactive cycle breaking archetype whereby you feel that so much has been gleaned ingrained by cycle breaking, and it's been constantly the state that you're in, that you feel like anything that's not cycle breaking probably isn't contributing to your practice. And that is obviously so not the case, but that is very often why it turns up. It can also turn up because, honestly, because of social media pressure, because of pressure that you feel from the resources that you're exploring or the teachers that you are listening to. There is a lot of stuff about shadow work and about, dark psyche healing and all of that kind of thing. There's so much stuff like that, and it does feel very legit and it feels very weighty. Obviously, it has a lot of gravitas. I talk about shadow work a lot on my channel, and I do posit it with a great deal of credit for helping me to become, in many ways, the more healed person that I am now. But I do think that it can create a kind of pressure that if we're not doing that, then we need to be doing that. There's also a bit of hustle mindset stuff in here, I think. It's like hustling for the breakthroughs, pushing for the wins, never giving yourself a fucking day off from doing this deep healing and deep discovery, and oftentimes very brutal shadow work that if you don't take breaks from it, it is going to become problematic. No question of that. The way that this can turn up is through equating your spirituality with suffering, seeing your suffering and going through that bag of broken glass of your wounds and your pain and your difficult memories as the ultimate spiritual practice. If you have this toxic mindset, then you're probably always mining your wounds. You're never really letting yourself rest, and everything is becoming actually quite oppressive in your path. Shadow work is just one part of the excellent complex spiral of your spirituality, okay? Silliness is also a part of it. Stillness is also a part of it. Growth happens in celebration. Growth happens in softness. Growth is in all of these areas for you as well. So it's really about trusting that. Number 7, if the spell didn't work, it's because I'm not good enough. If the witchcraft was not effective, then it means I failed. It's something to do with me. If something is not effective, it means I'm not spiritual enough. That is such a toxic mindset. One of the origins of this can definitely be, instant gratification culture in a sense, and that shows up with some of the previous things I mentioned as well, like the divination stuff and the deity stuff. Instant gratification is definitely a part of it. Spiritual elitism is definitely a part of it, right? That is something that is in the water in a lot of areas of spirituality and in spiritual spaces, is this idea of like, you've got to be good enough to pass these tests to know that you are that level of practitioner. And if you've been ingesting anything that is steeped in spiritual elitism, that also might be a reason why you come to really personally feel that you are not good enough to do what you're trying to do. Perfectionism is also another part of the reason that this comes up. If you struggle with perfectionism in general, then you might end up harboring this toxic mindset about like, I'm either good enough or I'm not good enough. And it also feeds into that simplicity of a binary thing, right? Something either worked or it didn't work. I'm either a powerful witch or I'm not a powerful witch. I either believe in magic or I don't believe in magic. If anybody saw my video about witchcraft for skeptics, which I will leave down below for you, you will know that I talked about the unhelpful idea of seeing magic and belief in magic as a binary. And I think that extends to this as well, right? It's not a binary. It's not just like something went off or it didn't go off, right? I'm good enough for this or I'm not good enough for this. There is so many more parts to the puzzle than that. But binary thinking can feel very easy, very simple, very straightforward, It's either a pass or a fail. But actually so many things in witchcraft are not like that. If you have this toxic mindset, then you're probably blaming yourself quite a lot. You're probably questioning your legitimacy as a witch quite a lot. You're spiraling a lot into self-doubt, and you are getting very discouraged when things don't work exactly as you envisioned them to need to work for you to be valid or for you to be good enough. Your value is not measured by mystical results. Magic has many variables, okay? There's so much more to understand. And again, as I said previously, there's so much more nuance than you are allowing yourself to experience if you are harboring this toxic mindset. Magic often works in very non-linear timelines, and we do need to trust the journey, and we do need to trust the way that it rolls out and actually learn from that and understand the various reasons why things might not have gone off as we wanted them to, and start to see that learning process as part of the gift and part of the intention of doing things like casting spells. And if your spells are not working at the moment, or if you've gone through periods in your witchcraft where your spells have not been working, please click down below to a video that I made on what to do if your spells are not working. Why are they not working, and what can you do differently? I've put all of that into a handy video for you, so go down there after this and check that one out because it really might help you. Number 8, if I am not receiving signs, seeing visions, hearing from gods, getting psychic downloads, I'm not a real witch. This one comes a lot from the glamorization of witchcraft in movies and media. It comes a lot from the glamorization of things like clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, connection to the gods, magic itself, all of that kind of thing. We have been fed a very cinematic idea of what this should look like and feel like, and what qualifies us to be able to say that we experience it. But of course, if you've been witching for any length of time, you know that there is a massive chasm, a massive piece of nothing between the media glamorization and the notion of what we do and what we actually fucking do. It's just like that meme, okay? What the media thinks I do, what my parents think I do, what my partner thinks I do, what I really do. And what you really do is just you like surrounded by witchcraft books and tarot decks everywhere and just like having a big think with a pen in your hand or something, but what the media glamorization is like you're flying on a broomstick and you're like seeing things coming out of the air at you. It doesn't really work like that. It's like when witches are concerned that they're not hearing the actual voice of a god, and you have to kind of explain to them that like, oh no, very, very, very often it's not actually a voice. When we say we are hearing from our gods, we are meaning something quite different. It's just lots of pop culture depictions of mediumship and psychic ability and that kind of thing that kind of, I think, bleeds into our practices a lot of the time. It can be to do with comparison as well, for sure. There are some witches that describe in great detail some very impressive results or experiences that they've had, right? And you might be somebody that feels like, oh shit, well now I need things to look or feel like that. And I've had moments like that in the past too. When I first got online and started reading from other practitioners, I was like, okay, that hasn't happened to me. But then it took me a while to realize that like, that's okay. Everybody has their own experience and their own way of working. The way that this toxic mindset often shows up is that you will discount the more subtle signs that you're receiving. You will downplay them or kind of like write them off because they don't feel like those great big hyped up experiences that you feel like you're supposed to be getting. You might ignore your gut instinct. You might dismiss things that are coming up that because they don't feel really significant and kind of earth shaking, you feel like, well, that's not it. That was nothing. That was nothing. When actually there are lots of more subtler flavors of signs and experiences that witches receive that lead them down some very interesting pathways and give them some very interesting access to unverified personal gnosis that I wish they would not discount because it really is significant. If you have this toxic mindset, then you might have been devaluing your non-visual or non-audient experiences with things like guides and gods or whatever. And you might also be discounting your very real experiences of communing with nature, communing with the forces of the natural world and getting messages and signs that way, because you might have put experiences with gods and guides on a pedestal, and therefore your experiences that you have whilst touching the exposed roots of an oak tree are just not the same. You're just not seeing them as the same, but they are of course also very significant. The spirit world often whispers. Listen to it with your entire body, not just with your eyes and your ears, okay? There are many, many ways to receive wisdom. You can receive it in your dreams, you receive it in your daydreams, you receive it through snippets of overheard conversation, you receive it from what comes on when you put your Spotify on shuffle, okay? There's so many different ways that you can get to the delicious meat and potatoes of what it is that you're supposed to be receiving for your path. And so don't discount all of those other beautiful ways of doing it. And don't forget that very often, because those experiences are more subtle, witches may not recount them in books or videos or podcasts, but they are also working with those subtler forms of messaging all the time. Okay, it's not that they are not experiencing them like you are, it's that they're not maybe the most firework experiences that they might think about writing about, so they won't, right? But actually lots of witches are working with that kind of material, and you are too. You're perfectly valid. Number 9, my witchcraft needs to look a certain way to be valid. There has to be a certain aesthetic. Now obviously we know that a lot of this BS comes from the social media witchcraft thing. I just recently made a video about spiritual consumerism, and I do go into into some discussion about witchcraft aesthetics and the online presentation of witchcraft. So I'll leave that video down below if you haven't seen it yet and you want to check that out. But certainly there is that sort of glamorization slash commodification of witchcraft that can lead us into this. And it can also sometimes just be that, like, we are aesthetic little beings, a lot of us, and we do feel that there is a lot to be said for the mood and the power of things like enclothed cognition, so power dressing, and getting everything on lock visually so that it feels a certain way and it kind of connects us into certain archetypal forces or certain references that we have. And sometimes that can just go over into a bit of shadowy territory, and we can end up feeling like we need everything to be so on point and so cinematic that we actually lose touch with what it is that we're really doing and feeling and believing. And instead we start to think about how it needs to look. The way that this might show up is that you will hide the messier parts of your practice. You will feel discouraged from coming to your practice if everything doesn't look beautiful. You might end up over investing in lots of spiritual tools and spending too much money, or you might end up having imposter syndrome when you feel like your aesthetics are not up to scratch or they're not where everybody else's are. A lot of witches will know that they have this toxic mindset and they're trying to get rid of it even as they are having it, right? So they're doing battle with that particular mindset even as they know that it is not right for them and it's not really what they genuinely believe about their path. Real magic is gritty, it is improvised, it is personal, it is something that can be raw, it can flow with you, it can have these moments where it is cinematic, it can have these moments where it is absolutely visually chaotic. It really can run the spectrum between those two things. Don't let the algorithm dictate your altar, okay? Ever do not let the media glamorization or the witch-fluencing area of things dictate what your witchcraft should look like, how you want it to feel, and how it can feel that is genuine, that actually links in with your life, with the space you have, with the things you own, with who you are, and with what is going on in your reality that might prevent you from having a picture perfect fucking AI generated path, you know, because that's not actually what you want. And so link back into what you really want, and more importantly, how you really want magic to hold you, how you want witchcraft to be something that like holds you through every aspect of your journey, through every part of your path and your timeline, you know, with whatever amount of money you have, with wherever you live, with whatever is going on, and with however much time you have to prep your place and get everything looking beautiful, because sometimes you don't have that time, or you don't have that inclination, or you don't have those kinds of spoons for the spoonies among you, right? And so we really have to allow witchcraft to link in with where we are right now and stop harboring twisted fantasies of aesthetics that are beyond us or beyond our means. Toxic mindset number 10. If I am truly spiritual and if I truly believe in what I'm doing, I should never doubt it. I should never feel uncertain. I should never feel unsure. I should always believe in what I'm doing. This goes back into that kind of binary. I either believe it or I don't believe it, right? It's either true or it's not true. And if I feel any doubt, if I feel any vacillation, then that means that I do not believe it. And actually, as usual, there is so much more nuance here, okay? There's just so much more nuance, okay? There's so much more to it than that. There can be a lot of toxic positivity here and a lot of spiritual elitism present here. This idea that we are supposed to be absolute dedicants to the path at every conceivable moment. And if we are not doing that, then we are not legitimate. We're not good enough. We don't believe it as much as the next practitioner does. And again, we're really just pushing ourselves into this horrible little corner of having to carve ourselves into the perfect spiritual shape. It can definitely be linked into comparison with other practitioners too. If we feel like there's a practitioner who's almost like a fundamentalist about what they believe, and we're actually kind of in a bit more of a wishy-washy state, or we're kind of like, we flit about between different things. We appreciate different conflicting paradigms. We can be quite paradoxical in our point of view, and our attitude depends on different variables, like, I don't know, time of the month for some of you, or, you know, just where you are in your life, or what was the most recent experience you had with something, or what you're reading right now, or anything like that. We can just end up feeling like, wow, other people have got it so on lock. They know what they believe and I don't, and that means something negative about me. The way that this shows up very often is in shaming yourself for questioning things, shaming yourself for having little areas of your mindset where you feel like several things could be true, or maybe none of those things could be true. It can really stop you from dealing with any discomfort or any kind of querying that you have in your path, because you're trying to just be so fastidious. You're trying to be so steadfast. with what you believe that you've forgotten that it's actually okay to develop and to change and to question things. You might just end up pretending to be a certain way when you're not. You're not that way. And so you prevent yourself from investigating so that you can stay in one spot and insist that you are a tree and your roots are planted right here and your branches are only going to grow up here, and it stops you from being exploratory. Doubt is a very sacred part of wisdom. Questioning is a very valid part of witchcraft, and we should let that lead us, and we should let that allow us to learn and explore the entire wonderland, okay? Alice doesn't go down the rabbit hole to follow a very specific map from A to B and then that's it, right? She finds Dinah, she goes home. No, she goes into the wood, she goes to the Mad Hatter's tea party, loads of crazy shit happens. And that's what I most want my path to feel like. I want that Wonderland vibe. I'm not going to get that from being perfectly sure that I'm only going to play croquet with the Queen. No, there's going to be a load of stuff that's going to happen between like this point and that point. And I'm going to absorb it. I'm going to meet the caterpillar on the mushroom, okay? I'm going to sing with the flowers in the garden. I want to do it all. And through being able to know that I want that from my path, I also know that it has to be okay to get good and lost. And that there's actually so much that can be gleaned from getting good and lost, my darlings.
But I just wanted to ask you which way I ought to go.
It really doesn't matter which way you go.
Number 11, witchcraft can be highly dangerous unless I follow one very specific set of rules. I've got to stick to these rules, otherwise things are going to get totally out of hand and I could end up harming myself or someone else. Now, I'm not saying that this toxic mindset should prevent you from being cautious and from having respect for the craft, but I'm saying that when it goes into a very shadowy, very oppressive territory that causes a lot of worry and a lot of like stress and anxiety, then I think we can afford to look at that. Where does it come from? I mean, it definitely comes from occult sensationalism, that is for sure, from both within and outside of occult circles, okay? So you've got people from outside that are saying maybe that the entirety of witchcraft is dangerous, and you've got people from inside saying it's dangerous unless you follow my exact tradition. It's dangerous unless you do things my way because I'm the king on high and I'm the big I am and I'm the dog's bollocks and I know what I'm doing. I'm the reincarnation of Crowley, follow me. A lot of it can therefore come from like witchfluencer BS, okay? And a lot of it can also come from, you know, a hangover from your religious training. If you grew up in an environment where you were made to feel like anything outside of religion, anything outside of the religion you were raised in is going to be dangerous and it's going to be sketchy, then once you get into that religion, you might end up trying to find somebody very like the person that was talking to you in church before you left, you know, your Christian paradigm, right? Someone who's going to tell you the way in case you end up going to hell. Someone who's going to explain to you how it works so you don't fall into the lake of fire. And so it's really that sense that you've just like taken that attitude over into your new paradigm. And rather than treating it like a playground, you're treating it like a prison yard. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that when it comes to things like practices that you're learning that are based on very set traditions, that you should not follow those practices out of respect, out of reverence, and because you're being taught a way of doing it. Okay, that's fine. Absolutely. And when it comes to closed practices, like just don't touch them and you'll be okay. That's kind of the attitude, right? But I think when it comes to like any situation where you feel like, I'm not allowed to explore my own point of view on this. I'm not allowed to think about how this might be more informed by my personality or my needs in some regard. Then you can get out, you can leave. You don't have to learn from that teacher who is making you feel like you're unable to even go over there and check something out. The way that this shows up is through having a lot of anxiety related to what you're doing, right? So you have big time anxiety before spell work or before divination. You just have a lot of nerves related to anything that you might be trying or learning. You might do very obsessive protection spells and rituals, just being really kind of like over the top compulsive about protection. You might have very, very strict adherence to a particular teacher that you're working with or a particular author that you feel like, oh wow, if I stray from them, it's literally like straying from God. Like I'm going to end up really in trouble. You might have a lot of fear of backlash. So it's basically just you start to become neurotic about what you're doing because you just feel like it's got to be so on point with what I've been taught or with what I've read. And I just can't stray from that. And it's making me feel very afraid to stray from that. And even if you know that that paradigm isn't for you anymore, you still might have this feeling of like, well, I can't leave because I'm going to end up in trouble, right? Does this remind you of a religious hangover? Because that's very often what it is. Intuition and boundaries and ethics and respect for what it is you're learning will keep you safe. But being like afraid to the point where you can't sleep, or you feel like you can't explore anything else, or you feel like you can't even be yourself, that is not power. That is not something that is genuinely powerful and fruitful. That is something that is chaining you up, keeping you small, and making you feel disconnected from what is the most beautiful thing about your path, which is that it fits with you. It is a relationship between yourself and your spiritual path. I made a video quite a while ago now about the danger of working with deity, and I talk a lot in that video about really stringent teachers that are very gung-ho for pushing their own attitude on things, and how that can actually be very unhelpful and very scary. So I'm going to leave that video down below. If you feel like that is resonating with you, please give it a watch. Number 12, the final toxic mindset that might be getting in the way for you as a witch is that there is no point doing witchcraft, magic, any of that to deal with the global crisis, to help in any way with the wider, more collective shadows and issues that are happening. Now, it's kind of obvious where this one comes from. It comes from despair, it comes from hopelessness, it comes from powerlessness, it comes from empathy burnout, it comes from compassion fatigue, it comes from being bewildered and overwhelmed, being a human being in this clown show, shit show of a timeline on this planet. It is totally understandable. I have completely been there, but I do think for me, it's a toxic mindset that I really have had to try to get myself out of time after time. And that's why I recently talked on my shorts on YouTube about witching for your causes. And it's why I consistently put out work on my Instagram, on my Patreon, and elsewhere on my Substack, etc., about collective mourning, collective healing, and collective work as witches for the wider situation, for social justice, for global liberation, etc., and for the idea that we are all connected, and that when a tragedy occurs somewhere else, it also occurs to us in our human soul. In the face of injustice, it can be incredibly frustrating that you cannot fix everything and you cannot save everyone. And that can end up making you devalue your witchcraft as a stabilizing force, as a way to send power where it needs to go, and as a key part of your fight for any justice or liberation that you are seeking for other people, many of whom you will never meet, okay? And they will never, ever know you. But it's really that feeling that magic is linked into who we are as human beings in that wider, broader human story. The way that this shows up a lot is in being disconnected from your power. It's really pulling away from witchcraft because you feel like nothing that you do for your personal growth or development is fair or correct in the face of such overwhelming collective tragedy. But it's also feeling that you can't witch for collective justice or witch in the face of collective tragedy because it just seems so silly, so meager, so meaningless. So we can end up getting stuck in this cycle where we don't witch for the planet and we don't witch for our world inside of us. So we just don't end up witching for anything. And for anyone who's read my second book, Witch in Darkness, you will know that there is an entire chapter in there about witching for collective justice and witching for the world called World in Darkness. And in that chapter, I really try to posit the benefits of making sure that you take your magic and your witchcraft and your divination to your activism, to your worldly concerns, and to your sense of what it means to be a compassionate and heartfelt human being on this planet. Witches that worry about whether or not magic makes any bit of difference, and witches that worry about whether or not their witchcraft is valid as a part of their activism may end up just stopping doing their activism altogether. And this is also something that's a really nasty way for this mindset to turn up, because for me, for example, in my reality, I feel like I witch for the world, but I also witch to give me the strength and the power and the courage to do the material things for the material change that I want to see in the world, right? So magic supports me in terms of it helps me do what I feel like I need to do to be a good citizen of Earth. But it also is something that I use to send power and to send illumination and strength and courage where it needs to go. So I'm delivering it to others who are going through struggles, but I'm also giving it to myself as nourishment for what I need to do as somebody who feels that change needs to have a material basis and I want to be part of the solutions. Magic is a tool for the resistance, okay? And there are so many groups of people who have magic and witchcraft as a part of their cultural identity and as a part of their family lineage that have been through massive struggles for liberation, for justice, and for their own rights, who know beyond any measure of a doubt that witchcraft has assisted them, that their magical traditions have assisted them. And we must learn from those groups all the time. We must understand that they understand what the fuck is going on, and that it is not for us to say that our witchcraft is not a part of our resilience and our activism and our genuine desire to see rebirth on a collective level. Do not underestimate what your small flame can ignite as a witch. Please don't ever underestimate it. I'm going to leave 2 videos down below if this has resonated with you. The first one is about witchcraft and its connection to activism, and the second one is about empathy burnout for sensitive witches who are troubled right now with all of the various different interconnected struggles going on planet Earth, okay? So watch those 2 videos if you need some motivation and some comfort, and if you need someone to help you to reconnect your witchcraft to what you are doing for collective justice. So my darlings, let me know, which of these 12 toxic mindsets have you experienced? Which have you previously dealt with and overcome? Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts and feelings are about this video. There are more toxic mindsets, okay, that plague witches. I have actually made an entire second video with the other half of this class, let's say, where there are 10 more toxic mindsets that I'm going to go through. I'm going to break down where they come from, how they show up, and how to deal with them. That video is going to be featured as an afterthoughts episode for my doll faces and Pop-Tarts over on Patreon. So if you want to get more into some of the toxic attitudes that hold us back as witches, go over there and become either a doll face or a Pop-Tart. There are so many other incredible benefits that you can get when you join either one of those tiers, including access to the monthly poll. You get afterthaughts episodes, obviously. You get discounts every single month for my store. You get 2 lives a month if you become a Pop-Tart as well. And there's also printables, audio offerings, the 1-card riff every month, and Discord access. So please, yeah, go over there and sample my wares. So much love, my darlings. Blessed be until next time. Mwah.